We're with Councillor Trina Massey of the Gabba ward. Right there.
Hi.
Let's start this off with your pronouns and a bit about yourself and what you are passionate about.
My pronouns are she, her. A little bit about me. I am a renter, long-time renter. I come from immigrant background. My mother's Filipino, my father's African-American. We moved here when I got residency when I was about 8. I am a woman of colour. I'm also a member of the queer community. And what are the things that I am passionate about? I am passionate about public transport, community spaces, parks, the environment, and most importantly, what am I passionate about? Justice.
All right, perfect. In my interview with Stephen Miles, we played a word game. This word game was in the first episode of Transit Chats. This word game was a game where I said a word or a phrase, and he gave a response. Now it's your turn.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
First one is free transport.
Yes.
Next one, bus 86.
Again, yes, and then replicate in other areas.
Bus 199.
The goat.
Go.
Controversial. Because people think it's the 60, but it's actually the 199, which is the goat of all buses in Brisbane.
Perfect. Now, this photo, if you'd like context on this photo, I can give you context.
Okay, please.
You want context?
Where did this context come from?
This photo,
come from?
The text "Our Greener Future" was on the back of every single metro vehicle until the Greens did surprisingly well in the 2024 election. From there, it's been removed. I was asked by several people to ask you about this. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Can I do more than one word?
Sure.
It's actually been removed everywhere.
That's terrible.
It's actually been removed everywhere. And so what would I say, what would one word I would use, or a couple of words that I would use, and I don't want to go too political, but we're coming.
And finally, blue city glider.
Oh, the 60.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Look, the highest patron bus in the city needs more increase of frequency, even at the moment. Even at peak hour, even though it's every 5 minutes, sometimes it's running late, but it should be running 5 minutes. Because West End and New Farm, remembering those areas, are nowhere near a metro. So it's the rapid transport that we need for those high density areas.
I might sneak in a little one in there and ask you, bus 26.
Should have been the 27.
Why is that?
The 27 actually goes into Kangaroo Point. There's only one bus that goes into Kangaroo Point, the 234. It goes every 20 minutes at peak hour and then once an hour afterwards. And it is within Kangaroo Point. So I'm talking about the pointy end of Kangaroo Point, where all the density is increasing and they only have one bus.
That is so true. Moving on, I guess, talking about the 26 or 27.
Well,
should bus 26 be an all-day service?
yes.
In 2024, the Greens came out with a proposal for a light rail system in Brisbane. Since then, the Brisbane Metro BRT, which we are currently on, has launched to enough success, with the council launching their plan to expand it to Capalaba, Brisbane Airport and Castledine. Do you reckon you'll run on light rail again in 2028?
I think one thing, firstly, the Metro I don't believe is a proper BRT because it doesn't have terminals, even though it's on the busway. And we could have created that. That might be a progression in the future. And then secondly, what we said was we would review some specific areas for trams and for light rail lines. And I think that investigation, that hasn't happened, noting that the first idea for Metro was that it would be light rail. I don't know if we'll run it on again, but I think it is worthy of investigation, especially when we think about the city and how congested buses are on our roads are. And I think it would be a review. If anything, I think we'd be reviewing the lines. One of the key kind of places that we said was that really rapid transit across that light rail from Mount Gravatt all the way through the Story Bridge to Hamilton, because that's where the Athletes Village was going to be. And so while I don't think that the Metro has solved all the problems, there are still major pockets of area in Brisbane, including my ward, that are grey zones for public transport, and we should investigate light rail.
Well, I guess you've already sort of answered this, but we'll get like another answer. What are your thoughts on the Metro in its current form?
The Brisbane has been traditionally spoke and wheel. And what I mean by that, a spoke and everything kind of comes to the centre. Even though we had a tram system, everything goes to the city and has always gone to the city. What the Metro is trying to do is transform that into intrinsically a trunk structure. And that is an important part of shifting the way that we use public transport, particularly buses. But the major problems are for any sort of trunk is the fact that at the top you have the leaves and the branches, and at the bottom you have the roots. And what I'm talking about, those are the connecting roots. There's an infrequency and unreliability. As I said, across the city there's black zones where public transport is, on the weekdays it's 1 bus per hour. On the weekends it ends at 5. And so while the Metro in its current form is shifting the mode of transport, unless we get the frequency and reliability on the roots and branches sorted. And the other thing, of course, is that what sits behind, when I talk about that spoke and wheel, what sits behind our current bus system is still that.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not just a frequency and reliability. I mean, just this morning, interestingly enough, I spent the morning listening at Tangara, which was actually a retirement resident in West End, listening to 45 people that used to catch the 86, and why that route was so positive for them. And it was about the connectivity, and the connectivity wasn't to the city. The connectivity was radial. Like, I can be in West End, but how do I get to Wollongabba? And so Brisbane undeniably has that missing as a part of its bus network. And I think you're just asking specifically in the about the Metro, but remember, the Metro was supposed to revolutionise our bus network. And so we're missing the radial routes. And what I also would say, because the Metro is on the busway, that we haven't reviewed in completion is bus jump lanes and also bus only lanes.
I wipe my head, it's so hot today.
Yeah, it's so hot today. It's a bad omen.
Yeah. In our conversation before this interview, you mentioned you didn't have a driver's license until recently.
Yeah.
How has this influenced your behaviour towards public transit policy in your role as councillor?
It influences everything because it's the system that I got around in. And it's a system that most people in Brisbane will get around in the future, not only in the inner city, but outside. I mean, I grew up in Stafford, and so the 345 was my lifeline to getting out of what was, it's changed now, but what was suburbia. Meeting my friends, connecting with my friends, getting home when I moved into the inner city, and I didn't have much money, with rent. I would make sure that I caught the night buses. Right, we're talking about how does it influence me? It was the thing that enabled me to connect with people, to go to university, and to save money. So I know the importance of public transport because it was so important to me. And every time I stand in there and I talk about when I go, my most recent bus, I catch public transport or I ride to work, to not only my office but also to City Hall. And the last time I did that, recently, the bus was 10 minutes late. There was only one bus I could catch. The busway was 14 minutes away by walk. The nearest ferry terminal was 14 minutes away. I live 2.5 kilometres away from City Hall. Okay? My bus was late by 10 minutes. And in total, it took me 42 minutes
That is not good.
And I live in the inner city. Okay? So when I talk about how the fact that I was a public transport user, I am a public transport user, I also rode bikes and I walked, it affects everything in how I think about public transport as someone that's supposed to not only represent Brisbane and legislate for Brisbane, because I have, like, I know what a late bus means. It means that I'm at work late and I get pulled up at the cafe and told that I might lose my job. I know what a late bus means when I'm going to uni. I know what it means when you forget about time and you're out and you miss your last bus. So it affects everything that I think about.
Yep. We're now going to get off this metro and go to somewhere quieter. Let's hit the stop button. And let's go. We're going to swing back to Brisbane Metro. And I'm going to say 3 words that are relevant to a campaign that you had a few months back. Dutton Park Place.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Dutton Park Place is one of the main areas for people to get to university, but also to get to the city from Annerley and Fairfield, and of course Dutton Park. It used to have the former line, which was, oh my God, 102.
102.
From memory. Which turned into one of the metro lines, but was then excluded from a metro stop. So while the metro goes through it, and it is a part of the busway, the metro does not stop there anymore. And through talking through residents, what we've found is while there's other buses that can go to UQ or go to the city or other destinations on the busway, these are actually all very infrequent. And do not provide the rapid transport that the metro would. Noting that the university is a key route.
Yep. Would you like to see 24/7 frequency?
Yes.
What routes?
The metro, the 60, the red glider,
61.
the 61, and also any of the high frequency buses that are going to new areas. I think stuff outside of the ward that would be considered would include the 345, so that goes north to Chermside. We'd also look at things on the south that go to Mount Gravatt. And also, I think we need to look towards Hamilton, which is a high population density, so thinking like the 360 or those kind of buses, or the 306. And then also moving west, which would be something like the 385, which goes through the inner city suburbs but goes all the way out to Barton.
Yep. If you had it your way, where would you like to see the busway extended to?
Do I have to pick one?
You can pick multiple.
Okay. Good. So obviously we got to keep going north. So the northern busway, we've got to progress it to Chermside because those are also high population density areas. And then we've got to consider going west. Yeah. So we have to go west, especially anything that can connect to some sort of hub that would then connect us to like Ipswich or Moreton Bay areas as bus facilitations. And this is it just makes sense. We need to go northwest, east, south, because we also don't have the busway heading towards Hamilton and further that way. But I think those two are the priorities. And the reason that I kind of talk about that, because we have to extend just beyond like the inner city. And you know, when I mentioned earlier, I'm just gonna riff, cut it out if you need.
So good.
But like when I talked about justice, what is unjust, for example, is someone that lives in the outer suburbs or maybe just outside Brisbane City Council having to wait 1.5 or 2 hours to get a bus to their workplace. That's not a just bus system. And that's what I mean where we have this opportunity with the metro to go towards hubs that can connect to those other places to create the opportunity for more frequency interconnectedly through the councils in the southeast Queensland. Because while we have a job, like I definitely have a job not only for my ward but to represent the city, we've got to also remember that like if like our bus transport system and our transit system, like the trains, has to connect to the rest of the southeast.
Yep. On that note, I want to bring up that back when the Eastern Busway was first sort of proposed and then ultimately built, the University of Queensland NIMBYs blocked the ability for the busway to go through the university.
Yes.
Now, it wasn't slated to do so, but as of today and currently, they're not allowed to extend it. Would you support overruling that, or potentially negotiating with them to get the busway built through the University of Queensland, whether that's a dedicated grade separated busway or bus lanes, to then go out to say Indooroopilly or western suburbs?
Yes, I know that can be controversial. I get that that's controversial, but yes. And when I say this also, just remember, and I'm not going to go too far into depth, but I think you'll hear what I'm saying. The charging stations for the metro are at Dutton Park, not at UQ. That doesn't make sense. The big batteries.
Yep. So we're now going to do a hypothetical. This is a similar hypothetical that I did in episode 1 of Transit Chats. Let's say you're the Premier of Queensland. You've taken over. You have unlimited budget. So let's say everyone in Queensland's all like billionaires. So you have unlimited money. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
You're Premier.
I'm Premier.
With a major majority.
How major? Like major.
Let's just say 150 seats. Just to give you unrestricted access.
Yes.
Transit-wise, and this doesn't have to be Southeast Queensland, you can mention other cities or towns as well.
Yeah.
What would you do?
The first thing I would do is, obviously for Brisbane, it's the frequency. I would be doing reviews of frequency and grey spots across the system. I would be reviewing where bus jump lanes is. And, you know, when we talk about that, we're not just talking about Brisbane. We have to actually do this. We have the Gold Coast, which has a high population too, the Sunshine Coast. So what we want is a really good movement for buses. Brisbane is very special because most people catch a bus. That would be something I'd be looking at first. I'd also be investigating not coaches as minibuses, but actual smaller buses, looking to bring for some of those less patron routes, but instead of going, oh, they're less patron, so we'll make them infrequent, we still have to provide a service and look at technology to provide that service to them. I would then be looking very specifically to the Sunshine Coast. Because while we know the train lines go to the hinterland, there's nothing that goes through Caloundra, and to the major, not major, but the beach side and the population centres that are on the Sunshine Coast, making it actually a really hard place, noting that the bus system isn't very sufficient there. I'd also be looking, at what kind of upgrades that we could do to train lines, probably in central and northern Queensland, and seeing what could be delivered there. I think there's a really important connections to those further north. So, you know, thinking Mackay to Cairns, to Townsville, to Cairns, and trying to increase the connectivity in that area. I would probably fund the stage 4 of the G line.
Oh, controversial.
Controversial. The reason I would say something why that's really important to the Gold Coast is when the first G line, when the first stage of the G line was put in place, all the data pretty much demonstrated that the increase in public transport was tremendous. And if population is going to increase again, in the Gold Coast, which it is, that's population estimates are going to increase. The G line is a really big way that has no stoppages to get to where you need to go. The lesson that the Gold Coast should have learnt from Brisbane is that when you put buses on roads where there's increasing density and there's more traffic and there's no public transport, buses get stuck. And that is my worry for the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And what else would I do? We need to go east. We need to have more efficient. I'd be looking at public transport. So by east I mean west, towards Ipswich and beyond. We need to be looking, because Ipswich is also going to be the next big population. So what I would be looking intrinsically is a review of the connectivity. If I was Premier, everything would be on the table to review how we can get better connections so that people not only have an option to not use a car, which is environmentally friendly, reduces congestion, but gets to the places and be able to live a good life using public transport. We wouldn't be the only one that should be able to do that.
Now, these two words will be the final question of this interview. Orbital rail. Tell us your thoughts.
My thoughts are, like I've already said, radial buses. So I would not... Yeah, look, we need something. Orbital, radial. Whether it's rail, whether it's buses, Brisbane needs it.
Yeah. Have you seen in Melbourne, they've actually got the smart bus system, which is a set of very efficient high-frequency orbital buses. Do you think Brisbane could look at that and maybe implement something here, keeping in mind that we do have the Great Circle Line, but the Great Circle Line currently sucks?
It sucks. Yes. And I say yes because, like, again, the Brisbane model was spoken wheel. And spoken wheel, no one goes to the city unless you work there, right? Most people are not going to the city for recreation. There's been a shift in how we activate as people navigating the city. And so what I would say to that is anything that creates opportunities to, especially not from just outside, because the Great Circle Line is, I think the former term is a Zone 3, Zone 4 bus.
Yeah.
Right? But anything that connects, I would say it would be 2 orbital routes, because one that connects in a city and a second one that connects anything that's like 5 to 7, 8 kilometres out of the city.
Yeah, I'm actually going to ask you, I keep adding questions. I'm actually going to ask you quite a controversial question. Okay. In Melbourne, the Premier Jacinta Allen announced the suburban rail loop.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but ask me the question.
So, the suburban rail loop is essentially a major orbital rail line that goes it's basically a similar line to one of the smart bus routes, except it's an underground rail line, similar to Cross River Rail, but more similar to Sydney Metro. It's a train that drives itself, entirely underground, and the idea is it is proper orbital rail that actually just connects everything.
Yeah.
Now, controversy behind that is that A, it's going to take about 20 years to complete. B, very expensive and will be paid for decades.
Yes.
And C, a lot of the Melbourne transit community, well, not really transit's on board with it, but a lot of the outer Melbourne community seems to have quite a lot of they don't seem to like it very much. Do you think, now this is hard because you don't actually know what it is, but do you think by 2050 Brisbane should be looking at a major orbital underground rail line?
It's hard to answer because it depends on what we build beforehand.
Yeah.
And I mean this very genuinely. So much of my assumptions, and correct me if I'm wrong with that, Melbourne, is it's one, obviously it's going to be expensive. 2, it is is it an inner city or an outer city orbital line?
Very outer city.
Very outer city.
Proper outskirts of Melbourne.
Yeah, and so I think it's actually going to be really dependent on probably 3 things, which is what we develop and build in the interim, where the population growth is. Melbourne's population growth is different. It's not growing in the inner city, it's growing in the outer suburbs, while Brisbane's population growth is completely in the inner 5 kilometres, right?
Yeah.
And so that, so it's about where that is placed and what we then build from that. And then the third thing, of course, is it's going to depend on what we're doing with the river, because the biggest challenge to orbital routes in Brisbane is the Brisbane River, and that's if we go underground.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. I wouldn't, for me, I can't say yes or no.
Yeah,
I need to actually understand what it is, because it would be very costly in Brisbane because we'd need 2 tunnels.
Yep. I know a certain other project that has 2 tunnels. You have now made it through the interview. What would you like to say to my audience?
Hi. I hope that I wasn't quite prepared, but I just very much gave you what I think.
That is all good. That's what we're looking for.
And I welcome any feedback of it, because no one can hold all knowledge in relation to public transport. And so welcome any feedback, but also see you on a bus or a train and keep fighting the good fight.
That's all good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really fun.